Y'all want to watch a girl who basically sleeps with all her dinner guests? Hedda Tessman is talking to the detectives. They want to know exactly what happened at the party yesterday, as there was a shooting. On the day of the celebration, Eileen Libor calls Hedda. Hedda is excited because she hasn't heard from Eileen for quite some time. Eileen knows that there will be a party to introduce Hedda and her husband to society, so she tells Hedda that she'll be there. It's going to be a big party and everyone's busy. But even the head cook is tired of Hedda. Bored, Hedda fires her father's gun multiple times. One of those is directed in Judge Brack's direction. The judge knows Hedda's playful, so he doesn't make a big deal out of it. This some rich white people behavior. Hedda's husband, George Tesman, is quite nervous. He and Hedda just got married, and he impulsively bought the house with Judge Brack's help. The property is loaned by the bank, so George is hoping to pay for it once he gets the job at the university. A respected man named Professor Greenwood decides on the professorship, and George wants Hedda to make sure that the old man will have a good time so that George can get that job. When the time comes, Hedda and George welcome Professor Greenwood and his young wife, Tabitha. That age gap is crazy. Sister really wanted to grab dat bag. While mingling with Tabitha, Hedda gets a bit annoyed with Tabitha's condescending behavior, so Judge Brack asks the white girl to get her a refill. Just then, Thea Ellison arrives and asks for Eileen. Hedda doesn't want Thea to leave, so she takes her upstairs and offers to lend her a dress to wear. After a little push, Hedda learns that Thea just left her husband. Thea reveals that she's a writer and that she worked on Eileen's best-selling book. They wrote a new book and finished the first draft. Unlike the first one, this book will have Thea's name. Hedda is jealous, so she tells Thea that Eileen was arrested before for being drunk and disorderly. But Thea assures her that Eileen has changed. Apparently, she got Eileen to stop drinking. During dinner, George says all he did on their honeymoon was research. And one of the guests named Jane is confused they didn't do the nasty.
Hedda has an insatiable appetite.
And says Jane knows Hedda a nasty whore. Thea is visibly distracted. She admits that she's looking for a woman that Eileen used to be with. According to Eileen, this woman tried to shoot her when she broke things off. Then Thea reveals that everything has to be perfect. She says that Eileen is applying for the professorship and endowment. Tonight, she's going to show Professor Greenwood the new manuscript. After learning this, Hedda immediately shares the information with the judge and George. George is now worried because Eileen is competition, and he badly needs the job so they can pay off the house. While everyone's distracted, Hedda and Judge Brack head somewhere private, and they kiss. She really does have an insatiable appetite. Then Hedda shows off her guns given by her father, the late General Gabler. While flirting, Hedda reveals how they came to buy the house. She was with George one night, and they passed by the house. She said she wanted it, and the next thing she knew, she was already married to George, and he had bought the property. George has always suspected the judge is shoving his gavel inside Hedda, but he never says it out loud. To make the party livelier, Hedda invites everyone to dance. Just then, Eileen Lovborg arrives with her friends. Damn, old woman got some knockers. Hedda quickly attends to them while assuring George that the guests will behave. Eileen has brought the only copy of her new book to show Professor Greenwood. Like the first book, the new one is also about bedroom exercises. Professor Greenwood approaches, compliments her knockers, and asks Eileen to drink alcohol, but Eileen says she prefers a soft drink. Suddenly, Eileen's friend David sees the maze outside and encourages the other guests to head there. Hedda and Eileen hide to talk in private. Eileen finds it funny that Hedda Gabler is married to George Tesman. She says that George is white and belongs in the middle class. Hedda defends George, saying that he is kind and an academic, and he will soon have a well-paying job. But Eileen reminds Hedda that she should build something for herself, or she'll be left with nothing when George gets bored of her. When Hedda mentions that Judge Brack helps her out, Eileen figures that Hedda is juggling the two men, four balls. The two get really close, and let's be honest, something fishy is going on here. Eileen refuses to show Hedda the manuscript. She admits that she was upset that Hedda didn't choose her before. But she got over the hurt when she met Thea. It turns out that Hedda threatened to shoot Eileen when she left her. But she didn't go through with it. Hedda's regret, however, is that she's not as brave as Thea, who left her husband and chose to be with Eileen. Eileen is so happy to see Thea that they immediately share smallpox. While together, Judge Brack tells Hedda she might find joy in having kids. But Hedda thinks she'll make a terrible mother. Knowing that Eileen might get the job, Hedda starts to act to help George because a life of poverty is her worst fear. First, she ensures Professor Greenwood will keep drinking. Second, she gets Eileen's friend David to flirt with the professor's wife. Then she encourages Eileen to show the manuscript to the professor. Eileen obliges, but Hedda soon approaches and offers her a drink. Eileen refuses to drink, but Hedda taunts her. Hedda says that the men in the university won't respect her unless she can act like them. To make things worse, Hedda said Thea is worried about Eileen's mental health when she's drunk. To save herself from utter embarrassment, Eileen accepts the drink. Afterward, Hedda encourages everyone to go for a swim at the lake. Thea doesn't want to, so the other guests pick her up and throw her into the water. Annoyed, Thea leaves Eileen with Hedda. Hedda flirts with Eileen to go into the water. Now that Eileen is drunk and is in the water, Hedda steals the manuscript and hides it under the bushes. But Eileen loves bushes, so why would you hide it in there? Meanwhile, Professor Greenwood catches his wife getting her back broken by David in the maze. Furious, the old man chases David and threatens to shoot him. Just as the professor pulls the trigger, Hedda's friend Jane moves his hand. The bullet hits the ceiling and the chandelier falls and shatters on the floor. After the spectacle, Eileen and Hedda talk. Hedda looks back at the time when Eileen asked her to run away together, but she was too scared to do so. Now, Eileen is with Thea. Hedda feels jealous because she could have been Eileen's partner and co-author of the new book. Hedda admits that she still loves Eileen Kitty, but Eileen has chosen Thea, because unlike Hedda, Thea has left her life behind just to be with her. Though this hurts Hedda, she plays it cool. Hedda looks so young compared to Eileen. I would have mistaken Eileen for Hedda's mother. Then, Hedda tells Eileen to join the men in the library, knowing full well that Eileen's white shirt is wet and you can literally see her nips. Eileen obliges, and George wants to tell her about her nips showing, but the judge shuts him up. She proceeds to indulge the men with the contents of her manuscript. She mentions a particular encounter with a bartender who asked if he could smell her feet. Eileen knew the request was a kink. This has led her to believe that there are other things that people want, even though they may seem unbelievable to some. She thinks that what is hidden now may be normalized in the future. Smelling feet is surely not normalized in my household. The men are entertained by Eileen's story, so she asks them to attend her lecture at the university. Outside of the library, Thea waits patiently. Hedda hates that Thea is with Eileen, so she tells her to leave. After that, Hedda hides the manuscript in a box with her gun. Eileen is already drunk. She snaps when one of the men calls her a slur, but George quickly pulls her out of the room to stop it from escalating. Eileen exclaims that she'll get the professorship, and George will be left with Hedda. George insists that Hedda loves him, but Eileen warns him that Hedda only loves herself and Kitty Cat. In the middle of the conversation, George asks if he could read Eileen's book. Feeling sorry for the man, Eileen agrees. So she goes looking for her bag and finds David holding it. She gets angry when she sees that the bag is empty. David doesn't want to be grabbed, so he punches George. He also accidentally hits Eileen. But Eileen can't care less. She wants her manuscript back and declares that they're not going to leave until they find it. So George and the others start to look, while Hedda pretends not to know where it is. Eileen goes outside and stumbles on some pages under the bushes. George suggests that the manuscript must have been blown by the wind. Eileen, already drunk, assumes that the rest of it is under the lake. She tries jumping into the water, but George and Brack manage to stop her. She's devastated because it's the only copy there is. She tells Thea what happened, and Thea's very disappointed. She has realized that no matter how much she supports Eileen, Eileen will always go down the same road, drunk and lost. The argument explodes, and Eileen exclaims that she no longer needs Thea. Guess the scissoring wasn't good enough. Thea promises to find the manuscript herself and have it published with her name on the cover along with Eileen. Hedda listens to the fight and tries to comfort Eileen afterward. She assures Eileen that she'll land on her own 2 feet after everything that happened. But Eileen is already lost. She believes the only thing that's preventing her from being ridiculed is the fact that she has brains. She's smart, and the manuscript is the key to keeping her image that way. She feels without the book, she's just a woman. Hedda excuses herself for a moment and returns with her father's gun. Then she gives it to Eileen to end herself. Hedda is diabolical. Head ass. Eileen says goodbye, walks out, and tries to kill herself, but she can't seem to pull the trigger. Knowing how devastated Eileen is, George keeps looking for the manuscript himself. He's surprised when he finds Hedda trying to burn it. He stops Hedda from doing so. He reminds her that it's Eileen's life's work. But Hedda thinks it's a necessary thing to do, or it will be impossible for George to get the professorship at the university. No matter the explanation, George doesn't agree to it. Just then, Hedda pretends that she's pregnant. She explains that she's doing it for their family. George kisses his wife, and he asks her to do that thing with her mouth. But she commands him to do it, so he does, while Eileen's manuscript continues to burn. When the judge hears what's happening, he can't help but get disappointed. He was disappointed that it wasn't him performing that thing with his mouth. Meanwhile, Eileen finally walks out of the house. When David confronts her, Eileen accidentally shoots herself. Thea quickly asks Hedda to call an ambulance. The next day, an investigation is launched. While Hedda answers questions, Thea and George busy themselves with reconstructing the manuscript. George thinks they have to make it in time before the next term so Eileen can use it if she lives. George also says if he doesn't get the job, they will just move to a smaller house. Hedda offers to help, but both George and Thea don't want her involved. When Hedda is finally alone, Judge Brack reveals that he knows the truth. 2 guns were fired the previous night, and he knows it was Hedda's gun that Eileen used. Judge Brack threatens to tell the truth to the authorities if Hedda doesn't give herself to him. Hedda refuses and pushes him away. Then she grabs a gun and shoots him. When she misses, he starts chasing her. The judge catches Hedda and tries to strangle her. Just then, he hears Thea and George looking for Hedda. He gets up and leaves Hedda alone. With the weight of everything that has happened, Hedda finally gives up. She puts some rocks in her robe and walks to the lake. Just before she drowns herself, George shouts that Eileen has woken up, and the movie ends. It seems she may or may not have drowned herself. That's left to interpretation. This was such high drama and a nice palate cleanser from the damn Tubi movies. What did you guys think of this period drama, and do you want more like this?
Hey, if you like this video, make sure you subscribe now and turn on the notification because YouTube isn't recommending my videos. And if you like to watch more foolishness, click here or here.